And without further ado, my name is Wilson Cao from Storage for Sports. We sell bicycle storage solutions, Dancer Sona. And we have the pleasure to invite Cindy as our co-host. She graduated from School of Arts in New York City, NYC. And we also have Tim, the Chief Product Developer at Science. And Tim is based out of Netherlands, which is the capital bicycle of the world, capital city of bicycle in the world. And Tim is currently the industry leader in e-bikes, and he has a lot of new innovations about e-bikes and specializes in high-end e-bike solutions. And next we have Victor as the guest speaker. So we have two in total guest speakers. Victor is CEO of Velocite, originally from Croatia. Fortunately, Victor is now based in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. So how's the weather over there? I think it's pretty good. Today's weather is really fine today in Taiwan. So Victor is enjoying the weather. And Victor is a technical wizard. He is really well versed in technical stuff, anything about bicycle manufacturing to even AI. Definitely, Victor is very smart in that. Victor, you want to kick us off?
I can do that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Can you, the magic button, share presentation. Here we go.
Yes.
Share. Can you see this? Okay,
yes.
Here we go. There we go. And to make it bigger, you pin it. Oh, it's big for me too. Okay, I will discuss briefly about a phenomenon that's been actively pursued by the consumers of bicycle technologies, meaning that mainly the developed economies of the world, like Europe and USA, and to some extent Australia, parts of Asia, excluding Japan. Japan is its own world. It's still self-contained and mostly isolated from the rest of the economy. And I will talk about what's known as reshoring. Reshoring means moving production back to where the demand for consumption is. Offshore production became a popular solution to increase profitability by brand owners because of labor costs that were rising as the prosperity of the local population rose. Changes in geopolitics allowed manufacturers to move manufacturing to countries that were less economically developed, and therefore the salaries were lower, ensuring profitability or sometimes even survival of manufacturing companies. However, due to the changes in geopolitics, as well as the originally economically underdeveloped countries becoming more developed and therefore labor costs increasing, brands have increasingly been looking to return manufacturing back home, or wherever it is, be it Germany, be it France, be it USA or Australia or Canada. Manufacturers, or bicycle manufacturers specifically, because that's my specialty, have been trying to move as much manufacturing back to the home markets as possible. However, that sounds nice in theory. In practice, it's proven very difficult because I will just bring up a slide for me to refer to so I give you exact information. Because even though the cost of labor has increased in developing economies, it is still roughly 3 times lower than in developed economies. For example, the cost of one worker per hour in Germany is $26. The same worker we are currently paying in China $7.70. And in one of the cheapest possible places in Europe, if you want to manufacture in Europe, we would have to pay 15 US dollars for a labor in Czech Republic. And that's roughly double the cost compared to China. So even though the desire is there to move manufacturing back home, so to say, there is still huge difficulty in making a financial equation that works. So what we've been focusing is using less labor for manufacturing and moving towards automation. However, even with automation, there are no processes that exist. So everything that we need to do has to be invented. So in our case, we have a research project that we started in 2015 using machine-managed processes to make carbon fiber bicycle rims. And we had a research project funded by European government to develop a process that can be successfully implemented in Europe, which we concluded in 2019. So even though we have a process that may work and make carbon fiber bicycle rims in Europe, we cannot commence this project because of a lack of know-how. Along with moving out production, what happened to domestic manufacturing is we lost the knowledge of how to make things. We lost the supporting industry that makes tools. We lost trained labor. They retired or died. In Europe, we have no people that can make bicycle rims, even with help of machines. So the process of reshoring manufacturing, it is far more difficult and goes beyond the simple costs of setting up business. I'm just showing you a photo of two machine-made rims that we've been making for a few years. So these are not made by hand, which is the norm. They're made using what's called a filament winding process. And this process uses less labor, but even this cannot be done in Europe because, as I said, we lack the workers and we lack the supply chain. So in order to successfully move manufacturing back to Europe, we have to reduce the handling costs and handling steps. We have to control the quality. And of course, if our supply chain is weak, our control of input quality is going to be difficult because we have no choice of suppliers. And we need to reduce the cycle time. The big problem with current supply chain of bicycle parts is that they're mostly all made in China, and they're mostly all consumed in Europe and USA. So what we call a lead time is roughly 12 months at best, meaning that brand owners may order a particular design, and 12 months later, it may arrive and be available for purchase on shelves in bicycle shops in USA. The advantage of reshoring is that lead time may be cut down to 30 days, for example. So that's one way to make a good argument for reshoring. But again, we come to the cost of labor. So the only way to reduce the cost of labor is by reducing the number of workers. And a problem with that is not that it's not possible. Automation is available. We have designs for machines that can do this. And there are actually even humanoid robots now that work quite well. BMW has them deployed in their German factory. The problem is the cost. Most governments in developed nations are worried about unemployment, and they're not going to subsidize you setting up a new factory that doesn't employ people. So having a process that doesn't employ people is not that appealing to anybody in government or banks even, because they work hand in hand with governments. So getting finance to set up a factory is another big challenge that we haven't yet been able to overcome. Governments both want us to set up and don't want us to set up unless we employ people. And we can't employ people because we can't pay for them. This slide shows you one of the processes we developed with the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, WZL Institute in Aachen, and the University of Technology in Aachen. So while we had our company set up in Belgium. So this was financed by the EU government and the government of Flanders in Belgium. And it shows you a way of how to make a bicycle rim using machine layup, no hands, using what's called a thermoplastic carbon fiber, which means that the material that holds the fibers in place is a plastic rather than a thermoset material, which is what is commonly used now. The difference with thermoplastic is that you can create a shape that you like, could be just a flat sheet, and lay it down. You can store flat sheets of thermoplastic, and they are quite happy just to lie flat. And when you need it to become a rim, you just reheat it and shape it into a rim. That is not possible with thermoset process. So with the thermoplastic process, we can make bicycle rim every 5 minutes, which is much faster than traditional rim making, which takes 1.5 days per rim due to the curing and geometric stability time. Rims need to be baked for about 1.5 hours, but after that, you still need to cook them for 1 day just to make sure that they're completely cooked. Whereas with thermoplastics, we can achieve all that in 5 minutes. So I'll talk briefly about quality control on the inputs. We can automate all that, but as I mentioned, getting the supply of materials is difficult because the supply chain in Europe in specific, because I'm more familiar with Europe, is all geared towards automotive and aerospace industries, not sporting goods, which is where we belong. So the types of materials available to us are not suitable. So this roughly shows how to make a bicycle rim using the full automation. And this part here is very, very small, but this is 1 million euro piece of machinery, and you can't see my cursor on the screen, so I can't really point you to what I mean. There is a bit of machinery here that molds the rim into the final shape that is horrendously expensive. Nobody in a bicycle industry has a 1 million euro mold. Our current mold sets costs around $7,000 or 6,500 euros. This particular mold or machine that would set the rim is 1 million euros. And that is just not a kind of money that the bicycle industry can support. So there is a slight financial problem with our process. Otherwise, we have a system to make carbon fiber composite rims in Europe or in USA or anywhere at all, in Taiwan, in someone's shop, because it does not emit any gases. It is quite silent. However, the cost of setup is quite high. So as I mentioned, the cycle times, currently it takes 1.5 days to make a carbon fiber bicycle rim. But for us, with our method, it takes 5 minutes, which is a significant improvement. And this picture just shows one of our prototype tools and prototype molds at the Fraunhofer Institute. And we were shaping a flat piece of thermoplastic into a rim shape, just using heat and pressure. This, another very complicated slide, shows a timing of and steps involved in making a rim. Okay, I think you can see my cursor now. So we would start with placing the tapes using a robot. So no touching. This is all machine made. Then a cutting machine would cut the excess tape that is now needed. Then we would have thermoforming, which means, or we would make a blank shape, basically a plate, by compressing all the different layers together using pressure and heat. Then we would weld separate parts together, because one other thing with thermoplastic is you can thermically or ultrasonically weld them. You don't need glue. You can make them stick to each other without gluing or co-molding. And then drilling, of course, and drilling can also be done without damaging the fiber, just by pressing a hot needle under pressure, and the fibers just move away, so without breaking. So in our projections, we could actually make one rim in 3 minutes, which is extraordinary but doable using our process. And this could work for reshoring implementation. However, the initial setup costs are quite high. And these are some samples from our prototype manufacturing. You can see the machine laid up tapes, and you can see the insides. Our wall thickness is quite uniform. The entire thing worked quite well and is feasible. But as I said, since 2019, we have not been able to set this up in Europe, even though it is feasible and it works and it is in demand. European demand for carbon rims is around 2 million pieces per year. So we're not talking about a small market. We're talking about a significant amount of money. I think I can stop here. If anyone has any questions, please free to ask me.
有观众有一些问题吗？可以在那个聊天那边，或是你如果要直接讲的话，可以先趁这个机会，你可以先 unmute， 先可以发表一下。如果没有的话，那我就跟大家做一点翻译。Victor, I'll just do a quick summary of your presentation. If there's no questions, 基本上他是做这个，他是生产这个 Tim. You want to go first, Tim?
You can translate it as well. I think it's good, but I just have a question for later, maybe after you finish.
Okay. Yeah, 所以他那个 Victor 现在是做这个rim， 就是那个轮子的这个生产，然后他有开发一个比较碳纤维、比较低成本的方式来做。那他刚刚有讲说，现在的生产大部分都是从中国来的，然后因为可能就是比较便宜，就是人工成本比较便宜，所以你可以看到大部分都是在中国那边，然后可是是 cater to 是提供这些产品给欧洲或是北美，基本上它是提供一个比较技术上面的一个开发的方式来减短这个成本，减少这个时间跟自动化，然后减少这个RAM 的生产的成本。Okay, Tim, you're up. You wanted to ask anything?
One question, because I was at the 3D printing exhibition last week, and I saw a lot of companies is working on recycled materials for fibers, recycled fibers. So would that be a possibility with this process, Victor, to use recycled materials?
Yes, because you can reform thermoplastic. Unless you break the fibers, some of the plastic matrices are infinitely reformable just by applying heat and pressure. So you would even get structurally sound objects just by reshaping it. It's not even recycling, it's reuse, remodeling.
Yeah, it's reusing. I think it's mostly reusing the waste that comes from like car manufacturing. They have a lot of waste sometimes, or from other type of manufacturing, they have the waste. You reuse that to make bicycle games. So maybe that would be boost some interest into this process, maybe.
No, our process requires new fiber. I know what you mean.
Okay.
I know what you mean. That's a different process. They call it a forged carbon fiber, where you use carbon fiber waste and add new resin, and you use compression molding to get new shapes out of it. You cannot make rims out of that. They would not be strong enough because there's one problem with thermoplastics, and that is creep. If thermoplastic is under constant strain, it will change shape unless your fibers are laid up correctly. So you cannot use chopped fiber and make, let's say, bicycle rims or even bicycle frames that are under constant load, because they will change shape over time. That is
Okay, thank you.
It's no problem.
This is good. Perfect.
All right. So Tim, you want to share your screen and pen it so
Yes.
everyone can see it?
I'll share mine.
Okay. So Tim, getting ready? Okay, great.
Yes.
Great.
A little bit different topic. So you can see this, right?
Oh, yes. That's everyone can see it. If not, message us.
Yeah. So I'm a bicycle designer. And I really like looking at the industry to look where it's going and what we can anticipate in the future. So I'm sharing today a few topics about that. So the main thing, what I think is really interesting for this industry is that we all see that the cities are getting more and more traffic with cars and more congestion. I live in a very rural area in the Netherlands, and even here at 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the evening, it's full traffic every day, every weekday. So this is one really big part where I see the bicycles can really help. People also are evolving their lifestyle, so they are more and more caring about being healthy. So this is something that we can also use. And the last one is that, well, in the Netherlands, but also in Germany, the e-bike market is continued to keeping rising. I think this year it's more than 56% of all bikes that were sold are electric bicycles. So this is something that is really good to keep in mind when you produce bicycles. So I divided my visions into 5 key themes. So this means these 5 themes, they are not means that this is the real future, but I mostly want to share about some signs on why I think the industry is heading to this direction. So I think those are just interesting topics to chat about and to also to work on in the future. The first one, I thought this was really cool. It's a autonomous cargo bike. But the main thing I wanted to share is that there is a trend here in Europe that the vans that do delivery for packages, that we always use vans. In China and in Taiwan, you use a lot of scooters as well. So you have the final delivery will be done on scooters, but then here it's always vans. So when I order something, there's always a van stopping in front of my door that gives me my package. And we are just now starting to find alternatives for this huge fuel powered van. So one of those could be electric cargo bikes. And this one takes it one step further. So it's autonomous cargo bike. And I think this is really interesting. If you look at the car industry, the Tesla just announced the autonomous taxi bus. So why not bicycles as well? So this would mean communicating with all the other traffic and with the autonomous cars, so they can drive through the road safely. So I think that this would be quite also essential if you have cars who are autonomous driving around. I think one of their weaknesses is the unpredictability of cyclists and pedestrians that are walking around. So if you also have bicycles attached to this network, this would also help for the cars as well. The second one is also a really important one, because in Europe, we have more and more cities who want to be fuel free in a few years. So some 2027, some a little bit later. But that means that there's no fuel vehicles like scooters. We have a lot of fuel scooters still here. So they will be banned. So you will see them being replaced by electric scooters. So if you are producing electric scooters as a Taiwanese manufacturing or Chinese manufacturing, I think this is a real big opportunity in Europe to bring those electric scooters to Europe as well. I had one when I was living in Shanghai, and I think they are great. But then here we not really have used them. We only use cars and bicycles. So that is something that will be coming quite big. But also the delivery of the packages, like I was just talking about, but also not only delivery of packages, but also the workers who come, like help you to fix your house or your water. They're also not allowed to drive into the city with their vans anymore. So either they have to buy an electric van, or they have to park their van outside the city and find a way to come inside. So this sounds a little bit crazy, but this is something that they're really talking about. So the cities not allowed to have any fuel vehicles inside anymore. And this will be quite a big change. And the C1, I really like this concept of the car bike. In this case, it's more like a tuk-tuk, so you can take 2 persons behind you. But I see most potential actually in cargo version of this. So that means that you can take heavier loads with you because you have the four wheels and you are protected from the elements with the roof cover. So I see a lot more vehicles like this coming out recently, and I think this will be something that will keep coming into the future as well. This one I'm really interested about by myself because we all know that the e-bike battery, it uses lithium, and it's really not the best material to be using in a battery, especially in some countries where it's gathered as a resource. It's not the best environments where that happens. And also the lifespan of the lithium batteries, it's just after a few years you have to replace it. So that means that I think it's not really a long-term solution for bicycles to use that. So you see, I'm interested actually in any solution. So I'm not saying that hydrogen is the solution, but I'm just interested to see alternatives for the lithium battery. And I really like this hydrogen powered e-bike because it's made by a company in China, I think. And I think that is also really interesting that from the Taiwanese or Chinese manufacturers, they are innovating as well. So that means I really want to see these innovations and new technologies coming from there. That would be really great. But also then with this solution, there would be a lot of need for different infrastructure. So you need to power or like replace your hydrogen cartridge with a new one. And also there has to be a lot of innovation being done on the compactness of the hydrogen. So maybe this is not the solution, but I'm really interested to see in the future if will be more solutions coming up. This one I'm very interested as a Dutch person. So this project you see on the right, it's been done in the Netherlands by the university. And what I actually mostly see why I want to talk about cycling paths is because we have a lot of innovation in the bicycles, and we can make the best e-bike and the best bicycles in the world. But in a lot of cities, the bike lanes and the infrastructure is just not good enough. So this means that you can have a really, really good bicycle, but if you don't have the good infrastructure, it's still not safe and it's still not nice to ride it. So this is something that would be also really be important in the industry. And I think this smart bicycle lane, so it doesn't really do that much for your bicycle, but what it mostly does is at this moment, it's just gathering the data of how many cyclists drive there and how fast they go. So at the moment, it's more for getting data, but in the future, also they plan to use it for autonomous vehicles and autonomous bikes. So you can do a lot more with it and prevent accident, maybe warn people with cameras. So this is something that I think also would be really great if this could become from Asia as well. But also, just making better bike lanes in some cities in Europe, like in London, in Paris, where I've recently been, that would be really great. I also have a video that explains it a little bit better. I'm not sure if you could hear the sound as well, and the last one, I'm also, especially at the current moment, I'm very excited about. So last week I was at the Home Next exhibition in Frankfurt, and it was a 4-day exhibition where all the 3D printing and additive manufacturing companies of the world, they were there. And it was really great to see. As a bicycle designer, I'm always looking around for where are the bicycles, and there were quite a few of them. Like I saw at least 5 different bicycles there, so that always catches my eye. And I also gave a presentation there about how we have used 3D printing and bicycles so far. So we have used it for prototyping, of course, but we have used it for production and for really producing parts of the frame, for example. Not yet for producing the full bicycle frame, but that's something that we are working on. And what I really like about additive manufacturing is that you can customize the bicycle. So we have made a bicycle where a part of the frame, which was non-bearing, so it was non-structural part, was 3D printed on each bike. So each bike had a different cover. So this also enabled us to customize this cover, for example, with the rider's name or with a different texture. And this example that you see here, it's made by a company called Trump or E101. E101 is a German bicycle company, and they have printed some of the lugs of this frame. So parts of this frame that are welded together with other normal tubes that they have printed. And doing this, they claim that they can really precisely control the wall thickness and the structure of each of these lugs to save weight. So this is something that will be really interesting in the future as well, to see how this develops. And of course, lastly, like I said, we've made a lot of prototypes, and I showed that also in my presentation. So this really speeds up the design process, and yeah, it really helps with designing bicycles. I also was in the panel there, and like I said, for me, this one is really interesting in the future, where every bike can be printed locally, cutting down on supply chain challenges while offering unparalleled customization. So what I mean is that it's the same topic that Victor also shared. So it's about reshoring some of the manufacturing to locally. So this will also offer more customization on the bike and shorter lead times on the parts of the bike. So this is something where the future could be going again, but of course nobody can really predict the future that well. But I think this is something that we will see a lot more, at least in the near future. A lot more talks and a lot more innovations about this. So I hope that the bicycle industry and the innovations, I think it's a really exciting industry to be in right now, because it really helps the people with a lot more accessible transportation. It's very good for businesses. So even for businesses who use bicycles and cargo bikes into their business, they can lower the operational costs. And also for cities, they're investing in this. So we are working also the same, like Victor also said. So we're also working with the European government and local Dutch government that are really interested in this industry to make mobility more efficient and also smarter. So also innovation. I think so this is something I'm really interested to speak here today, this webinar, because I think it's really interesting that the manufacturers that are mostly watching this webinar, and the designer like me, but also the policymaker like the government that we're working with, we all have to work together to make this happen. And also, I think we have to focus on the technology and innovation. So instead of like Victor also said, instead of like the price, I think the price will be less and less an issue in the future. Like maybe even the salary, the difference that Victor was talking about, like there's $24 in Europe and $7 in mainland China. I think this will more and more be getting balanced over the next 10, 20 years. So China will continue to grow. Maybe Europe will decline a little bit, but I think it will be balanced a lot more on the salary side, on the cost of the worker. So hopefully this will also enable a lot more focus on innovation as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. You guys, the people here, any questions for Tim? I know.
Yeah.
Victor,
Yeah,
you have
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Tim, did you discuss in your panel the two things, life cycle management of anything and standardization of components? Life cycle,
Yes.
specifically batteries, any items that wear out, even motors, and the standardization. What we are seeing now is hyper fragmentation inside the e-bike industry in terms of motor standards, frames, drivetrains, controls. Every brand wants to have their own. So do you have some thoughts on those?
Well, I think especially the life cycle, it's very important for me as a Dutch person. So I'm used that I bought my bicycle when I was 12, and that was 15 years ago, and I still have it and it still works. And I want the same for an e-bike. So that means the motor and the battery, at least it has to be able to easily replaced. But ultimately it would be like also lasting 20 years at least as a bicycle. And the second thing is the standardization. I think it will be also automatically will solve itself. So like we see also some companies that starting to use like Oli motors in Italy. They are using the exact same mounting as Bosch and Shimano. So that means that they are seeing the same issue, for example, with the motor bracket, but they are just solving it in their own way. Instead, they say, okay, if you have a bike with a Bosch motor, but you don't want to spend €1,000 on a whole new Bosch system, for example, when it's broken, you can go with the Oli system. So this is something that they are like solving in their own way. But I hope in the future it will solve out itself a little bit. And I also do think that I heard one interesting quote is that when you buy a car, you don't know which suspension the car has, which brand, which manufacturer that make the suspension, you don't know. But also a lot of more cars, like the brakes of your car, you don't know where they are produced. So, but for a bicycle, we know all of these things. So I think that this is something that also is quite interesting to think about.
All right.
Like
So-
for a car, you don't know where your rims are made even. So.
Okay. Thank you so much, Victor, for the question. Let me translate really quickly to the audience. 我先快速翻译，然后 Tim 在讲什么？Tim 刚刚讲的其实很多新的一些 idea， 然后非常精彩的一些新兴的一些 idea， 然后 apply 到应用都在那个单车上面。比如说 AI 的一个自动脚踏车，就是你不需要人来踩骑，就用 AI 自动开。然后 Victor 有说这个有点像那个 food delivery， 就像自动这个什么 food panda， 不需要人的 food panda 这种自动 delivery 的机器人。然后Tim 又讲到 hydrogen 的那个单车，就是用 hydrogen， 不是用我们一般的什么 lithium battery 或是其他比较传统的电池。hydrogen 可能是未来比较有效率的一个能源。然后他又讲到 e-scooters 可能在欧洲可能会有比较未来的一个机会。e-scooter 就是电动机车，在好像在荷兰或是以后欧盟会做很大的一个政策改变。所以如果台湾可以制造这些 e-scooters， 然后卖给符合这些当地的一些法规的话，其实是很大的一个商机，因为很多可能已经不是合法了在路上。然后他又讲一个比较很特别的，我觉得非常成本很大的一个 bike lane infrastructure， 可能就是这个建设。哇，刚才大家有看到那个 video 影片，这个是专门给未来 e-bike， 然后也是有tie in我们今天要讲的 Micromobility， 因为我们这整个 webinar 是大纲是讲 Micromobility 就微型的交通。那这个是以后希望Tim 跟地方政府可以 往朝向的一个地方。然后他又讲到 3D printing 来减低一些成本，制造成本。Yes. All right, Tim, I finished the translation. Okay. If you guys have any questions, 大家有什么问题吗？ If not, let's jump right into the panel discussion, if it's okay. Since today, we're going to talk about micromobility because this is the topic, how e-bikes, micromobility, and the future trends of bicycle what do you guys think would happen in the future? How we can fix micromobility. And this will be primarily the basis of the panel discussion. So the first is, what do you think about e-bikes and its impact in the environment, in the society, in the country? So let's start off with, because I see Tim on my far left side. Let's start with Tim with this question. What do you think about e-bikes and its impact for the future? Yeah.
So at the moment, the impact of the e-bike is kind of done in Europe. So everyone who has wished to own an e-bike, they have already bought it. And that's why you also see in Germany, the market is really, like the sales of the e-bike has really gone slow. Like it's really not that great in the Netherlands as well. So you see that this wave, I would say, is kind of done. But I think that in the future, there might be an extra wave coming, like with the talks about maybe like 15-minute cities that are coming in Europe. So that means that maybe with a bicycle, you can have anything that you need within 15 minutes of your home. So this would mean that the e-bike would be really helping with that you can do everything by bicycle and a lot less by cars. So I hope there will be a second wave of mobility vehicles and sales coming from a change in behavior, maybe.
All right, cool. What do you think, Victor? Do you agree?
Okay,
Any other questions?
I think Tim actually presented on this, but in my mind, it has to do with local city government ordinances. For example, in Paris, they closed off the center of it to all vehicles. In Amsterdam, that's been a case for quite a while. You could only go there by foot, but you can ride a bike. So now that I'm in Kaohsiung and speaking of other places that are not already bike or e-bike friendly, it will come down to governments, like in, say, in China, where you cannot use combustion anything unless you are a delivery person in some parts of the city. So in summary, I believe the next big push toward the e-bikes will be government rules. They will simply ban the use of combustion engines inside of cities or some zones inside of cities. Organic growth, I believe, has already happened and it's done, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the second question. Anyone has any questions for these guest speakers? No? All right. So the second panel discussion question will be how communities, businesses, and governments can collaborate to improve cycling infrastructure. How do you get all the parties to collaborate? I think that's the toughest thing. So if you guys have any strategies, let us know. Like Tim, do you have any? Let's start off with Tim. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is something that, especially in the last year, we've been getting more and more realized that this is really important to work with the government and also with the community. So for us, it has been really about like getting in touch with the government and sharing our idea of the solution. And because like the government most of the time will not come with the solution, but just if they like something, they will maybe support it, maybe not. So it's up to us as a business to come up with the solution, and we have to listen to the community. So when I was living I started in the industry, I was living in Shanghai, and we were manufacturing in Wuxi in Kunshan, and I really was not aware of the local cycling community in Europe. In the last 4 years, I've been back here, and it's really changed my mind a lot. So I think this also, hopefully, in today's webinar, I can explain a little bit on how the local people, what they're looking for, which type of products they're looking for, and maybe translate this to the manufacturers that are overseas, on what the community here needs, but also translate then that again to the government. So be the translator between all of those. So we listen to the community on which products we need to design, and then we also go to the government to say, okay, this is something that the community really wants and that we can help with, and that will hopefully also interest them to support this.
Okay, I'll give an example, slightly different angle to Tim's. What's happening in another country I'm from, Croatia, in the capital, Zagreb. The new city government is green or left-leaning, and they are trying to improve the cycling infrastructure in a city. But there's a conflict between cultures, which is a car culture, and with businesses. So the way that they've been winning businesses, not bike businesses, but businesses that are impacted by cycling infrastructure, for example, coffee shops, any kind of retail, is by showing that if bike infrastructure is in place instead of car parks, they actually get more traffic to their businesses. So they have more people in coffee shops, more people buying things in their stores. So cycling does actually improve access to retail. So that is one thing that existing businesses and communities like. Biggest resistance to cycling infrastructure improvement are cars and car culture. If you're going to put in bike lanes or bike provisions, you're going to have to remove something, and that is parking places. So people cannot park anymore. If they can't park, they protest. So the biggest challenge the governments have is how do you balance the presence of cars with the need for bikes. And I don't envy their challenge, and I have no solutions for that. But that is what is slowing down the infrastructure development. It's cars and the current mobility modes.
Okay, so I'm going to translate at the very last moment because we'll just keep things going. So let's just jump to the third question, and I'll translate everything at the very last moment. 所以我会翻译给大家，只是我在等他们谈完第三点最后一点之后，我再全部帮大家翻译。Okay, so let's move on to the last question, the panel discussion question. Do you have any personal insights? Because I know you two, Victor and Tim, you guys are really well versed in the manufacturing side of bicycling. Especially Tim, you have a design, a knowledge, background in bicycling, and all of you guys, including me, have stayed and lived in Asia before, which is the manufacturing center of the world. Do you have any suggestions, insights, or any interesting stories about the future of bike manufacturing and design? Because I know you guys covered this on your presentation, but any cool stuff? Yeah.
I have one major thought,
Okay.
and that is nothing much is going to happen for a while, nothing really important, until we solve energy density. Right now, the biggest limitation is what Tim said already in his presentation, is storage of electricity. Lithium batteries are not the solution. Hydrogen is not a solution because of lack of infrastructure. We don't have an actual solution yet. But as soon as we solve the energy density problem and recharge time problem, we will not have any questions about the future of e-bikes or designs. It will be a conveyance that everyone will have. So the only barrier to a 100% adoption right now is still unsolved energy storage problem. That's all I've got to say. Once that is solved, there's not going to be any presentations anymore. E-bikes will be a new reality.
All right, Tim, do you have any thoughts or stories, interesting
I'm
flying back.
actually very interested about the manufacturing side of this side because, like Victor said, the knowledge in Europe is really not there. So he gave example about the rims, but also the frames as well. So I had a frame manufacturer in Europe. They wanted to no, it's a metal manufacturer, and they wanted to start to make bicycle frames, and they didn't know how to do it. And they knew I was living in China, and I visited the frame manufacturers, and I know how they're making them. So they asked me for some advice on how to make the bicycle frame. Like they said, Tim, we don't. They actually had to learn from the Asian manufacturers to learn how to produce and weld a bicycle frame and how to do it efficiently and how so this is something that will be hopefully be more solved in the future, where this information is more being shared all over the world. Maybe somehow less like now. Of course, you don't want to share this with anyone because you have the competition, but maybe this will be something that will be less important in the future.
But
And
actually, just make
how I
that
see,
remember that EU government now is asking China to share technology back.
yes,
So
exactly. So
if
this
they
is
want,
something that I think China should be careful with, but I think in the future, maybe that, like you say, nothing will happen very shortly, but maybe in the long term, in 10 or 20 years, this type of things will be like something will happen where this will be more changed between the whole world. So it will not be just kept to one country, maybe. And
maybe.
also, where I see like a reshoring, but where I see mostly is the manufacturing being made locally, is that the Asia manufacturers will still keep producing the same things, but they will produce the things for the Asian market. And that's also what I really liked about Victor's presentation. So Victor's really open. Okay, we can do this in Taiwan, but ideally we will do this locally in Europe, ideally even in Central Europe, so it's even more close by to the bike companies. But I would say that means that the Asian manufacturers produce for Asia, and in Europe we have manufacturers producing for Europe market, and in America for American market. This is how I would see ideally all of it going, and it also means that maybe, yes, it is one company who has all of the knowledge on how to do it, and they just implement it into all of these areas of the world. So that means that everyone has to reinvent these things in this part of the world.
All right, that's great.
But-
Yeah, so for those attendees who understand what's being talked about, you can raise your hand or ask any questions. If not, I'll translate quickly into Chinese. All right, Cindy, any questions? Okay. Okay, the first question was, what do you think about e-bikes and its impact? 就是你觉得未来的 e-bike 会有什么影响？那Victor 有说，e-bike 已经历史，已经是过去的，然后要依赖政府，然后政府是Tim 跟 Victor 就说这是 depends on 政府。OK， 然后第二个的话，怎么跟 communities 团队跟商人跟政府怎么一起提供更好的单车的建设。那其实如果 Tim 有讲说，如果你可能就是要看政府那些地方政府要做什么，然后去做 research 做研究，然后回来给政府看说，其实这个群组需要这个单车要怎么走，怎么设计，然后用这种方式才可以说服地方政府来做一个改变。OK， 然后 cycling infrastructure Victor 就讲说 ，OK， 这个还是要跟汽车做个竞争，因为汽车的话是最大的敌人。因为其实汽车也有它的权利，然后单车有单车权利，所以这个两个的 party 两个人一直在 bump heads， 一直有一个冲突。所以如果可以和谐的话，或是把汽车的角色变小的话，因为单车如果很多人在骑单车的话，一定会帮助当地的一些店面来提高它的业绩。所以还是要对于汽车族怎么一起跟它共存， 或是减少它们的存在。OK，最后一个问题就是 personal insight， 就是他对未来的单车工厂设计有什么想法？那Victor 讲说，其实最大的问题还是在 energy density， 就是能量的怎么储存这个能量。如果解决这个储存能量的话，大家都要骑单车，不需要骑汽车。如果可以储存这个能量的话，我们可以用几百年，不要讲几百年，可能10几年都可以。对，然后就 Tim 就讲一些比较跟 manufacturing 有关系，然后他的跟中国跟欧洲的一些现在的政府的一些想法跟关系。All right, guys, Tim and Victor, thank you so much. I don't think anyone else have any questions. Any questions, please raise your hand. But today's webinar has been very successful. Thank you so much, Tim and Victor, for sharing your insights and your background. I've learned a lot. I'm sure everyone has learned a lot. So without further ado, today is a wrap up. And thank you so much, guys.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For the opportunity.
Bye. See you.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.